electric vehicles and the power grid. Are we prepared for tomorrow's demands? In other words, if everyone has an electric vehicle, is it all going to work? Can we charge them up? I'm actually not going to be moderating this, I'm pleased to say. So Shafik, Nasser, Chief Technology Officer of Saber Investments, is going to do that job for us. So Shafik, the stage is yours. Thank you. I don't think I'm joining you because I would like to just, am I?
Yeah, you're sitting here.
Oh, I am apparently, right. So for the next few minutes, I will be Mujib Ijaz, who sends his apologies, but he had a tour fixed up and then he had a bit of a break in the chain of the tour and couldn't make it here. So I will be Mujib Ijaz. Yes, good to see you. Good to see you. No, you got one on your chair. Yeah, the mic's on your chair.
I know.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, got it.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're the last panel, and you know they always say, save the best for last. So we hope to keep you engaged here as we discuss the future of EVs, where we're going, and whether or not we're ready. You know, we're talking about batteries, energy, infrastructure, and all the good stuff that we need to happen in order to have EVs working properly. Before I go on, I'm Shafik Nasser. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Saber. We have built a lot of the roads and highway infrastructure that you see in the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Al-Ain. We're talking about signage, gantries, guardrails, and I'm also the chairman of the IRF MENA committee. IRF is the International Road Federation from Washington, D.C. We work very closely with all the road agencies in the GCC region, putting together policy frameworks and strategy. And now EVs are becoming very important because of the cross-segmentation that's happening between when we're looking at EVs and we're looking at the future of driverless cars as autonomous vehicles. That's where you have a lot of the EV movement also picking up. But before we start our panel and our questionnaire, I'm going to go ahead and have the panel introduce themselves, beginning with Hassan.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Hassan.
Dr. Hassan.
Yeah, so I'm from the other side of the picture, that is academia. So I'm associate professor in University of Birmingham in Dubai, and we are running this program that is renewable energy engineering. That's why pretty much I'm here. As in renewable energy, you need to have sort of linking with the EVs, and that's something we are really interested in. From a background, I'm a mechanical engineer, and my core research area has been decarbonization of buildings, materials, energy efficiency, and heat transfer. So looking forward to the discussion.
Okay, Robert, the floor is yours.
So, there we go. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Roberto. I'm a Senior Vice President of Investment at Yellow Door Energy. Yellow Door Energy is a fully private, independent power producer here in the Middle East. We are private equity owned. We're investors into distributed energy solutions, more specifically into distributed solar energy storage and energy efficiency, with about 300 million in assets across the UAE and the rest of the GCC. We're expanding heavily in the region and now looking into electric mobility as well.
And then, of course, everybody knows Roger.
I'll quickly say 40 years in automotive, 20 years in electric vehicles, 10 years working for myself. I am agnostic to technology, and I'm an observer and storyteller of what I see around the world, including going to see Mujib Ijaz, who I will pretend to be today, around where we are with the battery, because, yeah, it's all about the battery, you could argue.
Thank you. Okay, before we continue, put your hands up if you own an electric vehicle. Any electric vehicles here? Yes, sir. And just curious, what kind?
Yeah. You've got an EV, Toddington. I know you have.
There's some people not telling us. Okay.
Right.
A Tesla, okay.
Very good.
And what was it that got you to want to have an electric vehicle? What drove that decision? So was it the electric car? Was it the technology? Was it a combination of both?
Both, especially I wanted to, excuse me. Thank you. Okay, my name is Sahim. I'm from Evolve EV Charging Solutions. We actually provide electric car chargers plus installation. So once we got into this business, the Tesla Model Y was the choice of car that we did because we wanted to experience the entire ecosystem of technology plus the vehicle and experience that ourselves to understand how good these electric vehicles are. So that's the reason why I got this car.
And when you were thinking about getting the car, were you looking at range also?
Yes.
Were you looking at your ability to charge? Either, I presume you have a charger at home?
Yes, we have
Okay.
a charger at home. Yeah, so we are fortunate to live in a villa, so it's easier for us to install a charger there. And I mean, right now I've had the car for almost 4 months, and we do 100% of our charging at home.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So today, if you look at the UAE, you could say that we have almost somewhere just under 20,000 electric vehicles. And there's a plan moving forward as you approach the next 5 years, 2030, to try to increase that amount. The EV adoption is very important. But of course, there are a lot of factors. So you don't have a lot of charging stations today. And if you do, you have the charging stations clustered all within one location. So a lot of your plans and your itinerary, if you own an EV, electric vehicle, is to know basically if you're going to charge it at home and where you're going to go, how you can keep charging it. So my question to the panel would be, how do you see the EV adoption in the UAE? And basically, if we're looking at the next 5 years, and if you've walked around this conference, you see there are a lot of different car manufacturers, a lot of different chargers. So how do you see this adoption taking place? So this goes to the panel. Feel free to respond, but maybe Hassan, Dr. Hassan, you can speak from a policy framework perspective.
So if we, answering the first bit of it is like, if you look at the region, the whole Middle East region, UAE has done really well in terms of, the decarbonizing the grid. So I'll take a step back from the batteries and the charging. Is the grid itself, how clean is that? So in the region, we have the cleanest grid, compared to Saudis, Qatars, other countries. And the reason for that is we have good nuclear plant. We just started a few years back in Abu Dhabi. And then we have good bit of solar. And that is what really pushes the carbon intensity, the grid really down. And that sort of informs the purpose of having, this net zero we were talking before, or cleaner, grid. Because there's no point running the EVs or anything when your energy is coming from the coal, So that kills the purpose. Although you get less tailpipe emissions, but as a country, you're still emitting a lot more. So that bit is good. And the UAE uptake has been, highest in the region as well. Primarily, supported by partly government, partly stakeholders coming in, and partly this drive what we saw in COP. And maybe it's a bit of smaller country than the Saudis. So that sort of factors are chipping in, and the EV uptake has been significant, though it is a much smaller market than the UK, Europe, US, and China. But it has been positive, and partly driven by much cleaner grid, and it is getting cleaner as we get more solar panels from companies like Yellow Door. That's part of it.
So with that said, Robert, we're looking at clean energy. We're looking at the ability to sustain the charging infrastructure in such a way where the whole ecosystem is clean, environmental friendly. looking at it from a investment perspective, how do you see that moving forward in terms of the adoption?
So look at two elements to that, also connected to your previous questions. Actually, what we notice is that, especially over the past couple of years, more and more of our clients are asking us to support them with the installation of charging points, right? Our clients are shopping malls, big manufacturing centers, industrial parks, and et cetera. Often we have requests from their chief sustainability officers or similar position asking us how we can complement your solar power plant with solution for an EV fleet on our premise. So we see a growing demand from our customer for this type of solution. And we do believe that is highly complementary to our business model. There is a lot of synergy between distributed sustainable energy solution and the EV space, exactly for many of the reasons that you mentioned, is a great way to address availability of charging point. Just to put that in context, we have over 55 power plants distributed across Dubai and Abu Dhabi, right? All those power plants and all those venues are suitable for installing charging points. It's a great way to address any concern the authorities might have in terms of interface and impact on grid stability. Because often using our power plant, our battery system is a great way to add a buffer to avoid instability or avoid destabilizing the national grid, right? And of course, it is more sustainable in terms of efficiency, right? So powering an EV directly from solar and batteries on a DC to DC basis is more efficient. 100% green, again, is a no-brainer from an engineering perspective. So again, we've seen demand, we've seen a growing demand from our customers, and again, we believe is highly complementary to the broader energy transition investment we're doing.
Thank you. And Roger, you obviously have a lot of experience in this. You've been in the automotive industry. You've seen a lot of the transformations and paradigms happening. Looking at the UAE, how much do you think they're ready? This is now, we're just still talking about infrastructure because it's going to be key in everything that they're trying to adopt as they move forward. So do you see it to be a big leap in transforming the infrastructure to be able to adopt more electric vehicles on the road? And how do you see that forward in terms of the energy storage and deployment?
Yeah, well, a comparable country in some ways is Norway. It is an oil state. It has a similar output of oil. It has transformed incredibly to electrification, electric vehicles. However, there are some big differences with Norway. It has a lot of hydro. I don't think there's a lot of hydro in the UAE. I've only been here a few days, but I'm pretty certain there isn't. Nonetheless, to answer your question, here's what I think the future is going to be. I think it's going to be incredibly exciting because what is oil? Oil is ancient solar. So what is this country blessed with? Oil for sure, but it's also blessed with sun, that's solar. So I could see a future where we have energy arteries all around the world connecting nation states and continents, moving renewable energy and using the battery as storage, batteries at scale, batteries both with ESS, stationary storage, but also millions and millions of electric vehicles with batteries in, acting then as the buffer, the management system to control and manage our grids. So I think, and it won't happen overnight, but I think over the next 2 or 3 or 4 decades, we could see this region of the world become as important and powerful with renewable energy as it is with oil. And the good news for this region and good news for the world will be that is much more sustainable in terms of the planet, much more sustainable economically, and, you know, it just is a brighter future. So I think far from EVs being a problem and far from, are we prepared for tomorrow's demand? We turn it on its head. The batteries become the solution. They become the opportunity for how we transition to more and more renewable energy. So, yeah, I can honestly think to myself, and from what I see and who I talk to, that is a credible journey that we could all go on.
And that will be a great, thank you, Roger. That'll be a great segue to the next topic. Every time we talk about the EVs, we're really talking about batteries, right? And at the end of the day, apart from the electric motor and the chassis, the most important critical element in the EV is the battery. That's where the range comes, that's where the power drive comes, everything comes from the battery. So, you know, Dr. Hassan, we were speaking earlier, and it's, you know, very important as we're looking at batteries and we're looking at supply chains and value chains, you know, it becomes a big concern because ultimately it's minerals, as was mentioned earlier, and these minerals are in certain locations around the world, and it starts to create both a combination of a constraint in the supply chain, but also a, you know, a need for a certain kind of taking control or ownership of the mineral chain. So, Dr. Hassan, how do you see this, and how do you see this moving forward in terms of kind of sustaining it in such a way that you have electrification happening without disruption?
Well, it's a challenge, I would say, because at the moment, we've discussed in the previous session as well that it's pretty much, you know, dominated by China. This is what we are, and you like it or not. And so this is, you know, actually evolving into a new section of research that they're looking for new chemistries, new battery. That's why we had Mujib on our panel. He's stuck in, you know, flights. But countries are looking at new chemistries and new batteries that I'm not expert in. But you know, this is the challenge that the world is trying to solve, to have, you know, alternate materials, alternate batteries, and eventually trying to have more democratic, you know, supply chains where you have sort of a fair market around it, so that you don't have the hegemony of, you know, one certain player.
Thank you. And Robert, as you're looking at it from, as you said, part of it is investment, do you see a lot of investment happening, or is there, as Dr. Hassan mentioned, I mean, is the opportunity today to look at different ways either to do battery manufacturing, or we were speaking earlier about energy storage, you know, when you're dealing with microgrids, you can't just have one power grid, you know, especially as we were talking about infrastructure. You need to be able to have this energy kind of deployed and dispersed across. Where do you see the, now we're talking specifically around the energy needed to power and supply to the EVs. So one is, of course, to the batteries and ultimately, so where do you see this kind of transformation or opportunity happening in the battery manufacturing or technology space?
So first and foremost, actually, we are buyers of batteries, as a matter of fact, right? We invest in energy storage that is a grid level, not for EVs, clearly. But what we notice is that there is a lot of synergies and cross-pollination between the two sectors. And if you're looking at ultimately the biggest manufacturers of EV batteries are also the biggest in providing a grid solution. And what we're seeing as buyers is dramatic changes almost on a quarterly basis, in terms of performance, in terms of costing, in terms of terms and conditions. We're speaking with manufacturers in China frequently, is by far a material production center for the technology. I fully agree, cannot be discounted. There is a lot of innovation going on in terms of new chemistries, new metals, new electrolyte. Probably most of you are familiar with solid state electrolyte, and etc. So we see quite a lot of organic investment gone into battery technology. Our view is that it's still actually a nascent technology. We will see a lot of progression, innovation happening across most of the critical elements of your battery solution. Could be the electrode, could be the electrolyte, with the battery management system, especially if you interface with AI and etc. So look, as I said, as a buyer, it's a great time to be buyers. Prices are going down. Chemistry are getting better. I do personally believe that chemistries will have in 10 years are materially different from what we have today. I think that a lot of the anxiety we have today in terms of availability or raw materials is actually overblown.
And then just on the battery topic, Roger, do you think that it will be easy for maybe the UAE? I know you've seen a lot of different countries. Would it be possible, like the UAE, to localize some of the battery manufacturing and do battery manufacturing here?
Yeah, well, whenever you talk about battery manufacturing or gigafactories or whatever, you have to talk about supply chain. So, you know, I go back to my earlier point. the way in which the Chinese approached the development of the electric vehicle was the obvious thing of, well, you need a battery. So if you need a battery, you need a supply chain. And I think what we've seen in other parts of the world is an ambition to build battery factories, which is good. Rebalance, you know, that geopolitical imbalance of where they're all made, predominantly Asia. Not just China, of course, it is Japan and South Korea too. But you can only really look at building batteries if you understand where you're going to get the raw materials from. And whether it's sodium, whether it's lithium, whether it's cobalt, graphite, manganese, nickel, whatever, you've got to have a route to market, route to production. Otherwise, it isn't going to happen. But one additional thing I'd like to say, which, you know, I have the good fortune of not working for a particular industry or a company. I can be a bit broader in my thinking and get away with it because, you know, there's not a consequence for me. But I wonder sometimes whether in trying to build the world we're building and charging infrastructure this and electric vehicles that we're doing the wrong thing in that if we do work towards autonomous vehicles at scale and we have robotic vehicles and we move away from owning a vehicle or having to park the vehicle and pay for parking, pay for it sleeping at night when we're in bed, all of that wasteful resource, then maybe it completely changes how we need the grid to work with electric vehicles. You know, if Abu Dhabi was predominantly about people not owning a car, there'd be less congestion, probably, possibly, not necessarily. But it would change the number of vehicles around. Those vehicles would be used 24/7, for sure. But nonetheless, I wonder whether we're trying to create an infrastructure on what we've had rather than infrastructure on what's going to come. So that's just, you know, hypothetical thinking.
That's actually very interesting. So, like I said, I am with the International Road Federation, work very closely with the road agencies, Abu Dhabi Mobility, RTA, and, you know, so there, as you know, there's a lot of congestion. Congestions lead to accidents. They lead to a lot of traffic complications. So, you know, the idea moving forward when we're dealing with road safety or like, you know, the future, as you mentioned, is if you are ultimately going to, if the total cost of ownership of vehicles will go down, it means people are not looking at a car as I want to own a car. I just want to get, you know, from point A to point B, and I want to do it in the fastest, most smooth manner, you know, and not really worry about any traffic accident or traffic complication. Then in that case, everything changes, right? So mobility becomes a service. So ultimately, you're not responsible for the car, your own car. You're not worrying about the car. There's none of that going on. You don't own it. You don't use it. You just, you know, you just sign on as a service and you use it, right, to get you from that. So the whole energy requirement changes. And in that case, as you mentioned, you may not have as much traffic because of the whole ride-sharing concept. And that's ultimately when you have the right balance between the public transportation and the kind of you owning a vehicle, and you have the right balance, then you may have a more kind of streamlined approach to energy adoption and on the energy usage. And with that said, so let's speak a bit about, okay, as you mentioned, Roger, or the panel, you guys mentioned about solar energy, and basically that's being used today. And of course, in some cases, they're trying to use the solar grid, you know, to power the charging stations. And I think, Roger, you were talking a bit about other, there are other methods, right, that you could extract energy. So would you like, I mean, this goes to the panel, either to Dr. Hassan, Robert, or Roger. I mean, solar is great, obviously, but then if you look at sandstorms and some other complication covering the solar panel, then the efficiency of the solar panel goes down. So obviously we would need to be more creative in other types of ways to charge our cars that are not just solar. So panel, would you like to take a shot at this?
Well, I come from the solar industry, so...
Yeah. For
But
this region,
the only comment is that sandstorm is not a problem. I mean, you do clean your panels on a daily basis. So actually, as you mentioned, I do believe this region is really blessed with solar. Like the irradiation per square meters in this part of the world is sky high. It's probably by far the most efficient renewable energy source you can think of.
So do you see that the solar farms are just going to get bigger and they're just going to expand?
Not only that.
They do have a lot of
space.
They do have a lot of gigawatt solar farms everywhere, you know. And
No, it's also dry cleaning. It's like cleaning is not necessarily with water, right? It's like, again, this region is blessed with some of the best irradiation per square meters in the planet, first and foremost. You got plenty of space, right? Panels are getting efficiency again on a daily basis. So in terms of efficiency in production per square meter, is actually impressive.
And there are historical precedents. A good one, I think, always I'm sure it's well known in these parts, is Sheikh Yamani of OPEC back in the 1970s famously said, the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stone. You know, and the oil age won't run out, you know, won't end because we've run out of oil. It will because we have alternatives. You know, and as an electric vehicle advocate, whatever else I might be in my head or whatever, I actually don't think we'll see the end of oil. What we'll see is a huge, it will diminish considerably, but it won't stop, it won't go away. We need baseload. We need baseload in many aspects of how the grid works and many other things. And again, what I've learned very much in being here in just these few days is there are different local challenges here. And I hadn't thought enough about it, if I'm honest, about how extreme heat impacts on every aspect of life. So you can't just say, here's a magic wand, we're all just going to run on renewables and the world's a perfect place and everyone's happy. That sounds nice, but that's not practical. So I think, again, reflecting on those words of Sheikh Yamani, we will move on to a huge volume of renewables, but it doesn't mean oil ends. And I don't think it should, quite frankly, because there are many other things that contribute to CO2 in the atmosphere other than fossil fuels. And I sometimes think, even though I am an EV advocate, that we have bullied the auto industry and bullied the oil industry too much. And it's become a kind of fashionable thing, rather than looking at the balanced scorecard of how does carbon get in the air and what do we do to tackle all the things that put it there, not just one or two things. And I'm not saying that because I'm, you know, in an oil country trying to ingratiate myself with people. I've said it many, many times before.
you actually bring a great point there, Roger. So obviously there's this whole movement towards net zero, right? Zero carbon emissions. And a lot of it, of course, when you start looking at traffic congestion and a lot of carbon emission cars kind of concentrated in one place, then you may be creating a lot of carbon pollution. But what's really interesting is that really those carbon emissions are not necessarily coming just from the cars. There's a lot of other factors out there that contribute to carbon emissions, okay? And you're right, at the end of the day, we cannot say that, oh, here's where it's going to stop and something else is going to start, because oil and carbon are important chemicals in a lot of other products and solutions. And you mentioned something about the extreme heat of this country. I was born in Dubai, grew up in Abu Dhabi. The summers here are hot. They're very hot. And once, things have gotten better, but there were times back then when everybody turned on the ACs, the air conditions, you just taxed that grid like crazy, okay? And now you've got a summer that's going to be extremely hot. You'll have a grid that's extremely taxed. And you've got EVs taking from it. Of course, now IRENA and the nuclear power plant is kind of supporting that. So how do you see, and this is again another question for the panel, how do you see the balance of energy extraction on the grid, and how do you support that? Again, this is for the panel.
Maybe I can take it. So the way it happens in any country is that as the economy is growing, you need to keep adding more, capacity to the grid. So this is constant growth. This is one of the KPIs of the growth of any country. So when we are looking at more EVs, coming to the market, the countries are planning to upgrade the grid constantly so that electrification can now be transferred to the grid that was before coming from the oil. So this is the long-term planning that the countries are doing. And I can say for this region, they are adding more to the grid and they're adding more renewables to the grid, mostly solar, because this is the most suitable option for this region. Wind, we have a little bit of wind. The wind velocity we have is not very suitable to have more, efficient output from that. So that's one answer to this one. And also what you were referring to earlier was that now the EVs are going to be sold more. At the moment, you have one EV sold out of every 5 cars in the world. So that number is going to grow up. And that shift is going to come to the grid. And for that, you need to add more capacity to the grid. And if that capacity is coming from the renewables, it will add to the benefit because eventually you will have zero emissions for what you're traveling compared to if you're getting that same energy from the coal or the gas, because eventually the emissions have happened and now you're just using that energy. But it's good to have no emissions in the first place. And this actually complements what we call the NDCs. Now, every country has to report their emissions every 2 years, and this is what, it's not really ethics, it's not really what I like or dislike, it's sort of a binding on every country, Paris Agreement, that you have to report every 2 years what you have emitted, and the countries are trying to push it down, and there are benefits to that, sometimes economic benefits, because if your grid is cleaner, you can sell more. So yeah, it's pretty much things are connected to each other. If you take one step, it's going to complement few others as well. So it's going to help.
Robert, would you like to add anything?
No, I agree with your assessment. And if you want to look more on a global level, ultimately your energy mix depends where you are on the planet, right? Again, it was a good comparison between UAE and Norway. I mean, Norway, you have a crazy fjord density, right? You have more fjord than cities, if you like, and extremely rainy. Of course, hydro is a logical choice. Solar in Norway, probably not the most logical choice, right? Vice versa in this region, same argument will apply, upside down, right? So it really depends where you are. Understanding that you might have a different energy mix, different solution based on where you are, what are your needs, what is your geography, climate, is actually important, right? I don't think anybody believes in a silver bullet.
Okay, moving on. So now we're talking about electrification, about energy, about technology. What about the human element? The people, okay? There is obviously stakeholders. We're all responsible for this kind of transformation and this paradigm to succeed and to work. So let's talk about the user. Let's talk about the human factor. Let's talk about the public in general. What part do we play in this electrification? And is that part critical? I mean, how do we? And of course, at the end of the day, when you're discussing stakeholders, that's where you've got the policies, the frameworks, the standards. You, as I said, you walk around this show and there are charging stations. Some I've frankly never heard of. This has been an experience to see, how this industry is growing and everybody's coming up with different charging stations and charging adapters. So, more than anything, they always say with technology and end user adoption, you need the buy-in. Well, who's the buy-in coming from? Is the buy-in coming from the people? Is the buy-in coming from the car manufacturers? Is the buy-in coming from the government? Where are we in enabling this transformation, and how can we work together to make it successful? To the panel.
Well, I think I haven't read it in absolute detail, but the programs for 2030 and 2050, the policy documents here in the UAE, His Excellency Sharif Al-Alama alluded to some of that on stage about, for example, grassroots education, about communicating with people to explain, the journey that we're on. And I think that's important. So, excuse me, education, if you like, from all levels, so sort of to answer your question simplistically, everybody's involved. But I think unless we actually give the information and communicate to the general public, things won't happen. And that has a different impact in different countries. The reality in democratic systems is that governments, politicians typically only listen to they should listen to the people. If the people aren't embracing something because they don't believe in it or it hasn't been explained to them, the politicians aren't interested. So getting the public interested in many parts of the world is the beginning of getting the politicians to be more serious about it, to create long-term policies and get the job done. So that's my thought.
It's actually interesting, speaking of education. So I own an iX, a BMW iX 40, it's electric vehicle. And my children cannot wait to park the car, and they start fighting like, who's gonna be the one to plug the charger in the car? They get all excited, you know? I mean, at the gas station, they don't say anything, but then, you know, in a minute we have one that's a electric one that's gas, but yeah, it's interesting. They look at it as I mean, as far as my kids go, they look at it, wow, this is like a toy. This is a game, you know, just go and plug the car and play with it. So you're right. It's interesting how the generations are going to adopt this. Okay, we've got 9 minutes left. Any final thoughts? Anything we haven't discussed where that's going to be important for the electrification strategy and roadmap in the next 5 years? And you know, it could be for the UAE or, you know, globally. Panel?
Just one thought. I mean, the pace at which the technology has developed for solar and the batteries particularly, because they both are linked together in a way that produce and store, and that goes to the EV as well, is just mind-boggling, you know. In the last 3 years, the batteries have gone really low cost. The efficiencies have gone up. The life cycle the span has improved and the range has improved as well. So there has been some magic happened in the last 3 years. And this is, if this is continued, you know, considering the disruptions in the world dynamics, you know, this is really going to be very useful for the EV market. And we will see much faster penetration of EVs compared to the projections. So this is something that is good, and the same goes to the solar, because the cost of producing electricity with solar is now much cheaper compared to the fossil. So if you need a new plant for a new, you know, city or something, solar is the cheapest option. It doesn't include the existing assets. If you are developing a new asset, solar is the cheapest option in the region, and coupled with wind if you have favorable wind. So this is not just, you know, good for the environment. It is good for the banks and good for the books as well, you know. So you balance them very nicely. And this is a very strong business case. So when you need a business case, you don't need those you know, arguments around ethics or environment, because it makes a lot of sense. So this is something that I would see, you know, in the future. It's going to change a lot, massively.
Any other thoughts?
No, again, I fully agree, especially on the solar side. No, look, I think is unstoppable. I mean, the fundamentals are quite clear, both on the electric mobility, on the renewable energy. Technology is getting better, it's getting cheaper, it's getting more efficient, easier to adopt, easier to install. Unstoppable, if you ask me. We're seeing exponential growth in these sectors, and again, the economics, fundamentals is such that it will be unstoppable.
Roger?
Yeah, I mean, to that point, fundamentals and economics make it unstoppable. The adoption of any new technology, any new shift in any country, in any part of the world in history, is all about, is this better? Is this cheaper? At the moment, electric vehicles in this part of the world are not better, are not cheaper. So that's why it's going to be a struggle to see that adoption in countries like Norway, through policy and other aspects of change, and in the UK to some extent, they are better. They are whole life cost, TCO cost cheaper. So, and especially when we embrace bidirectional charging and you can make money, get a revenue stream from your EV, even better still. So I think the reality check here is that it will be a different pace of change for different reasons around the world. We can't click our fingers and everyone goes EV. And for it to happen in this country, is going to be harder to achieve than in many other countries. Fact to life. Nonetheless, it's still possible, probably just going to take a bit longer, because the cost of energy and the benefit of being in an oil state and the fact that, fossil fuel is very energy dense, all of the realities, but nonetheless, I think, like all technologies, when it's cheaper and better, people will choose it.
So I have a lasting thought. Thank you, Roger. The other thing we need to look at as far as electric cars go, electric vehicles go, is that, I don't know if you're aware, but in California, they have a lot of fires. And a lot of it is actually an electric car, when it's on fire and the lithium battery explodes. Okay, they say that's kind of the reason why the fires in Los Angeles and in the Palisades were difficult to put off, was because as the fires were getting bigger and bigger, and the lithium batteries. So, we obviously, this is a good, now a lot of the battery evolutions that are happening and all the battery technology that's being studied is they're getting off lithium and they're trying to find other ways of building these batteries, because an lithium battery, once it goes in flame and it's on fire, you can't really put it off with water. That's why they've had a lot of issues there. So now is a good time to actually look at other battery technologies, and also lithium itself and the minerals with it. That's kind of the reasons why you've had a lot of issues with the mining and the conflicts that are happening there. So I think that we should encourage for other batteries, manufacturers to play into the electric vehicle market. And what I love about the electrification process and some of the kind of technology companies I've been talking to is seeing all these different battery manufacturers playing with different kind of elements and different kind of metal ions in order to come with a more kind of sustainable. And actually, if you can produce a battery with a value chain that doesn't really need a lot of the parts and the components to come from everywhere, and you can get it more consolidated, then actually you reduce its size, you make it cheaper, and becomes more sustainable, becomes more resilient, and it actually feeds into the market and the requirements better. So I think that's exciting transformations that are happening is in the battery section, and how it fits. That's one part. The other thing I think that is interesting is, and as was alluded to before, is today the electric car is ultimately the battery. Okay, it is the battery. Okay, so it's everything. So when you go and you buy one, the first thing you ask is, what is the life of the battery? What is the insurance and warranty on the battery? It's all the batteries. So that becomes, for me, when we got it, that was very critical. That's very important. So that's why it's a good time to look at the different ways to store energy in the car and the different ways to charge it. We have 2 minutes. I open up to the panel. I'm not to the panel. Well, you're the audience. Any questions? Any comments? Jason, you want to say something?
Just curious what the panel thinks about one technology. Thank you very much, Shafik. Just curious what the panel thinks about one technology that I advised, sulfur as a solution. I'm coming from a company called Lighton out of Silicon Valley.
Just to rephrase, sulfur?
Sulfur batteries, lithium sulfur, which uses methane our battery uses methane, sulfur, and lithium, which we can take from the brine. If maybe have any of the panel heard about the lithium sulfur technology yet?
Yeah. Well, if I can answer but not as a battery expert or any sense in that fashion. I learned two very important words when I worked at Ricardo, which is an engineering consultancy, which is, the answer is, it depends. So, and that's not a cop-out answer. It depends on the application. It's about application-specific chemistries. So, you know, LFP works very well. It's very good because there's no nickel, there's no cobalt, but it doesn't have the energy density that NMC has. So, depending upon what you want it for, what is the duty cycle application, dictates, well not dictates, but encourages you to look at a different battery chemistry. To be specific to your question, I can't, if I'm honest, because I wouldn't give an intelligent enough answer, other than to say there will be application-specific, you know, examples of where that particular chemistry will work well and will be better than many of the others. But yeah, it depends how much you want to spend, what the duty cycle is of the proposition, you know, cost, you know, a whole load of things, supply chain, you know, the critical mineral supply chain. So, but it's not a great answer to a very good question, so I apologize. Sorry.
Robert, I saw you.
No, a similar answer. Look, we are agnostic in terms of chemistry choice. It depends on the application, depends on the price point, depends on the specs, right? We see them in a holistic way, really.
Dr. Hassan?
No, I'm not the good person to write answer.
Okay. Anyone in the audience would like
There's
to
someone
answer
at the
this?
back might have an answer, possibly, unless it's a different
Yes.
question.
Before I pass to Mike,
Yeah.
I'll just say we're way cheaper per kilowatt hour than sodium and lithium iron phosphate and lithium ion and all local supply chain, no mine materials.
Yeah. But this would be quite good if we could have a question from the audience answered by another member of the audience. That would be a first. Unless it's a different question.
Maybe it's a question.
Hello,
Is this a question or an answer?
I have a question actually,
Okay.
but following up to your topic. So, I'm not a big fan of lithium. I have a spoiled phone in one of my drawers and it's still there, and it's just about to explode. I don't know what to do with it. And I believe there's a lot of waste in this sector. So, my question is, why aren't we focusing on fuel cells? It's a bit broad, but I mean, it's still a certain battery.
Yeah, it's a great question.
This is a passionate subject for Dr.
No, no.
I think we need another panel for that.
Yeah.
No, it's a great question. Actually, we had hydrogen competing batteries maybe 4 years ago. More recently, again, coming back to my point earlier I made, the batteries have gone so well that they have pushed hydrogen out, at least from the light vehicles. So we will have some fuel cells or hydrogen in the heavy industry, heavy vehicles, but in the smaller ones, what we call sedans or whatever terminology we use in the car industry, hydrogen is pushed out from the market. This doesn't mean that fuel cell is not a great technology. It is evolving, but the batteries have done too well to prove themselves better. So we will have fuel cells in other applications, definitely, but not in the, this is what I think.
We did have a presentation from Zero Avia yesterday, who use hydrogen fuel cells for their electric aircraft proposition.
Yeah.
So again, my cop-out answer, yes, it depends.
Okay. But hydrogen is very compact. Its energy density is good, so it's good for aerospace applications where weight really matters. But again, hydrogen is competing for good range that batteries have now done as well, and you need entirely different set of infrastructure that is not really available. With electric, we can have chargers. We have in this world, in this region, but we have no hydrogen charging stations here. Very few in the Europe, but yeah, this is it.
So, obviously the hydrogen plan and the fuel cell plan is also there, but that's in another topic. Any other question, comment, concern?
Right, let's do our team photo.
Thank you so much.
And I'm just going to say hello. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll do a quick team picture, and I'm just going to say a couple of words and we're done. So, yeah, if you'd like to. Great, thank you. So, for all of you that have remained, thank you so much for being here. Certainly if you have been the last 3 days, we really appreciate it. I would like to thank, obviously, excuse me, could you, yeah. I'd like to certainly thank Nirvana Mice for their investment of time. Absolutely thank the sponsors and the exhibitors and everybody who's contributed to making this happen. I would personally like to thank Fatima, who has kindly helped guide me, bring our speakers and panels together, and make sure I'm in a position to come up here and know that something else is going to happen after that. So Fatima, thank you so much. And we appreciate you being here, and we hope you'll come to the 5th event next year. So for now, thank you very much, and goodbye. Thank you.